Long before Plato composed the Republic, describing the ideal state and ideal king, the poet sage Valmiki wrote the epic Ramayana doing just that. Written more than 3,000 years ago, the Ramayana is the story of Rama as an ideal human being, an ideal monarch, the ideal philosopher king. Even today, people in India refer to Ram Rajya as a fair and just rule of a country. The Ramayana contains more than 20,000 verses. It is larger than Homer's Iliad, which contains 8,000 verses, or Virgil's Aeneid, which contains 4,500 verses. In length, it is exceeded by the Mahabharata, composed by the sage Vyasa, which has more than 100,000 verses and believed to be the longest poem ever written by a single human being. The mind is like a sponge. It absorbs any idea or thought put in front of it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, "The mind is like a laundered cloth. It takes on the color of the dye you dip it in." We are all according to our thoughts. This important psychological principle was foremost in the minds of the ancient sages. That is why, in their infinite wisdom, they composed epic poetic works exemplifying the lives of great spiritual personalities. But why poetry? Because poetry conveys feeling, poetry inspires, poetry is easily remembered, poetry is also music, it stirs and activates the deeper chambers of the mind. Poetry energizes the being. In his essay, The Absolute and Manifestation, Swami Vivekananda writes, "In the old Upanishads we find sublime poetry, their authors were poets. Plato says inspiration comes to people through poetry. And it seems as if these ancient sages, seers of truth, were raised above humanity to show the highest truths through poetry. Music came out of their hearts." Vol 2, p. 140. Legend has it that the great sage Narada was visiting the forest hermitage of Valmiki. Valmiki welcomed him and asked, "Tell me, O Narada, who among the heroes of the world is the highest in both virtue and wisdom?" And Narada replied, "Rama is the hero you are inquiring about. Descended from the line of Ikshvaku, he is self-controlled, greatly heroic, possessed of brilliance, firmness and restraint, wise and just, skilled in speech, knowing the right true of promise and devoted to the welfare of his subjects. He is the philosopher king. He is Rama." And then Narada recited the story of Rama's life. So impressed was Valmiki by this story that even after Narada left his ashrama, the greatness of Rama was revolving in his mind. As he was pondering thus and proceeded to the river for his morning bath, he saw two birds sporting and singing in their joy of life, and suddenly the male bird fell down shot by a hunter's arrow. Seeing this, Valmiki hurled a curse to the hunter. Recovering himself from this burst of emotion, he was surprised by the rhythm and cadence of his words. His sorrow was transformed into verse. From Soka sprang Sloka. Then and there, through the power of meditation, Valmiki composed the Ramayana, the story of Rama. And he wrote, "This story will last as long as the mountains stand and the rivers flow." Such was his conviction of its timeless quality. Such is the greatness of this oldest literary work known to humanity, that Valmiki is said to be the inventor of verse. We all need examples. It is by appreciation of spirituality that spirituality is gained, says Swami Vivekananda. When the life of a great person shines luminously in our consciousness, we grow into that image. Devotion is genetic to all of humanity. Love is inherent in all of us. We normally put that love in the wrong places and thus come to grief. However, if that love is placed at the altar of a noble ideal represented by a spiritual personality, then we grow into that image. We evolve into that image. The Bhakta reflects Bhagavan. As Sri Ramakrishna would say, the devotee is God's drawing room. Having a spiritual ideal makes our life meaningful. True, we may not all be able to live up to the high standard, but at least we can try. And if we fall or stumble, we can get up and continue to try again. Perseverance will finally conquer, says Swami Vivekananda. We must have the highest ideal. Unfortunately, in this life, The vast majority of persons are groping through this dark life without an ideal at all. If a man with an ideal makes 1,000 mistakes, I am sure that the man without an ideal makes 50,000. Therefore, it is better to have an ideal. And this ideal we must hear about as much as we can, till it enters into our hearts, into our brains, into our very veins, until it tingles in every drop of blood and permeates every pore in our body. We must meditate upon it.